Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show. Look here. The op is getting out of lockup after his partner that he had done so much dirt with on the street is killed by another group that's in the penitentiary. Now, this brother's mind is slipping. He can't really control what's going on no more. He's out of his element. Yeah, the prison is full of people, that have done all kinds of crazy things. But see, when you end up in prison and you're not on the streets, you're not free to do any and everything that you want to do. And him being snatched up and locked up and put in the hole just for that short amount of time, it threw him off. See, he had gotten away with so much in his life that he had grown accustomed to getting away with things. No consequences, no nothing. It was like he had become a wild animal. And when you take a wild animal and you put them in a cage or you put a chain around their neck, they can't handle that. That's not what they are meant to be. That's not the environment that they want to be in. They want to be free to do whatever they want to do. But see, he couldn't do that in prison. He couldn't do that in prison. And it made him all the way throwed off. So when he's out on the compound, after a week goes by, they ended up putting him in school. And they put him in the class. Because keep in mind, let me tell you something. You remember when Chilli first came into the system and they asked him about anybody that he might have problems with and all these types of things, right? And they knew about his case, so they kept him advised and let him know that the opposition that he had gotten involved with on the street, they were in this prison, but he never gave them a specific name or person. Not one time. So now they don't know that this individual is somebody that he has a past with. And they put him in the classroom that Chilli is the teacher's aide of. And the day comes. See, because when you get put in class, when you get put in school, the first thing they do, they give you a test to see what level that you're on. So Chilli had to administer this test to the op and give him this test. So the teacher, she puts Chilli and the opposition in a separate little room, right? That's where they give you the test at. And she instructs Chilli to give him the test and just sit there until he finishes in case he has a question or something like that he needs to ask them. So when the time comes for them to do this, the time comes for them to get this test, Chilli is sitting in there with him. And the opposition tells him, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking this test. So Chilli looks at him, he tells me, he said, man, you got to take the test, man. That's how they're going to know where you at. He's trying to be all professional about it and all this kind of stuff, but the opposition is trying to let him know, no, I ain't doing nothing, and you better put 100 on that test for me. So Chilli looks at him, he tried to explain to him in a logical way what's going on, right? But you can't be logical with illogical, right? Period. It's just that on that. You can do and say whatever it is that you want to say that makes sense, and these are the rules and all this and that, but that's not going to resonate with him. That's not going to get through to him. That don't mean nothing to him. Nothing at all. So now he's looking at Chilli and he tells him, he said, look, I know what's going on with you. You know I know the secret. You know I know what's going on. And now you're going to do what I want you to do. Or I'm going to tell your brothers what's really going on with you. That's what I'm going to do. So Chilli looks at him and he got a choice to make. He got a choice to make. So he gets up and he walks out of the room. And when he walks out of the room, he leans on the wall. And while he's leaning on the wall, he puts his hands over his face. And he says, man, what do I do? Now keep in mind, right, his reputation in the penitentiary had grown beyond what he had actually done. Like he's this real hard hitter, right? But see, this dude knew. He knew who he was. He had seen him walk away. He had seen him walk away. So he knew that the reputation that he had wasn't true. He knew that he was a wolf. He was a sheep, rather, in wolf's clothing. He's not a wolf. He was a fraud. He was masquerading to be somebody that he wasn't. And the op wasn't going to let him get away with it no more. See, the op is a wild animal. And he going to do what he want to do, how he want to do it, no matter who's affected. So Chilli, he fixed the test to make it look like the op had took it. And he takes it back to the teacher. Big mistake, because now he's giving ground. You give an inch, they're going to take a mile. So when they get back to the unit, Pastor T happens to be in the unit. And Pastor T, he walks by and he tells the op, he said, let me talk to you, young man. And the op, he had developed some type of respect for Pastor T, but he really didn't want to hear it. But he sat down at the table and he talked to him for a little while. And while he's sitting at the table talking to him, some of the things that Pastor T was telling him was sinking in. And he was telling him that you're better than this. You don't have to keep living your life like this. He's saying all of these types of things to him. And the op is looking at him like, he's talking to me like he knows something about me. He's talking to me as if he knows me. See, Pastor T, because he had been doing this for a while, he told him, he said, look, let me tell you about me. Let me tell you about my life. He said, once upon a time, I was that dude in the streets. And he told him about his affiliation and his past. And he didn't happen to belong to the same group that the opposition belonged to. And what was good, he didn't belong to, even better rather, he didn't belong to the group that Chilli belonged to. So the op wasn't too intimidated by listening to this story. So as Pastor T started telling him his story, he told him all the things that he had done in the streets and the things that he had gotten away with and how he had changed his life. Now, the op is looking at him and listening to him, and he's like, I don't really believe that. I don't think none of that's true. So Pastor T, he tells me, he said, I'm going to show you something tomorrow. I'm going to prove to you that everything that I've told you is true. And he said, if I prove to you that everything that I'm saying is true, I want you to come to church. Go to church one day. One day. So the op, he looking at him like, all right, then, that's what's up. I'll do that. So he gets up, Pastor T leaves, he goes to talk to somebody else. But the op, he's thrown off by all of the things that Pastor T had just told him. So he forgets all about Chilli. And he goes into a cell, and he's laying there, and he's talking to one of his brothers about Pastor T. And his brother tells him that Pastor T is the real deal. He's the real deal. And he lays there in the bunk and he falls asleep. And when he falls asleep, he has this dream. He has this dream that somebody's grabbing him by his ankle and they're pulling him down in this dark, dark hole. And he's screaming and he wakes up from his sleep, sweating, screaming. And his cellie like, what's wrong, bro? And he looks at his cellie with his eyes real big, glossed over. He couldn't speak. Couldn't say a word. And he laid back down and tried to go to sleep, but he couldn't. He was too afraid. He didn't really want to shut his eyes. So he lay there the rest of the night with his eyes open, looking at the ceiling, wondering what the dream meant. So the next day, he went to see Pastor T before he went to school. And he told Pastor T about the dream that he had had. And Pastor T told him, he said, that dream was some demons. And they were pulling at you. They were trying to pull you down further into the darkness. That darkness that you've become comfortable in. You see. And the op, he looked at him, he stared at him, he's trying to figure out what's going on, right? And he's like, what is the darkness? And Pastor T told him, he said, that's where you're going to be. You're going to be in eternal darkness if you don't get your life right. He said, you don't get that many opportunities after the dream. So the opposite said, after the dream, and Pastor T said, yeah, after the dream. He said, we all had that dream. We all have that warning that lets us know that we don't have much time left, that we got to get it straight. So the op looked at him. He said, what about my friend? And he was talking about his partner that had just gotten killed in the penitentiary. He said, what about my friend? Do you think he had the dream? And Pastor T looked at him. He said, we all have that dream. We all have that opportunity, that moment to get it right. And it's up to you to take it or not. He said, do you think he had that dream? And do you think he took heed to it? He said, well, you tell me. You tell me. Did he ever tell you about that dream? Did he ever tell you that something happened to him, that he felt like that he wasn't doing the right thing? And the op looked at him and said, no. He said he was either lying or he was too scared to tell you. One of the two. One of the two. Because we all have it. We all had that opportunity to get it right. And he said, you got an opportunity to get it right. He said, but while you're here, let me show you something. So Pastor T started to show him all these old newspaper clippings about him and all this. And then he got the bandana on. You know, he was from a whole nother state. He's showing him all of these things, right? His mugshot picture and everything. And the op is sitting there looking at him, and he's blown away by this. And he's getting hyped. And Pastor T said, I didn't show you that for you to get excited. He said, I wanted to show you that so you'll know that I'm keeping it 100 with you. I'm telling you the truth about who I was. So the op, he calms down and he sits there and he looks over these pictures and he starts asking Pastor T a lot of things about his life. And he starts to break things down for him. And before that conversation was over, the op had tears in his eyes. He had tears in his eyes about all the things that he had done. So he told Pastor T, he said, I got to go. And he got up and he rushed out of his office. And he went on to school. And that day when he was in school, he really didn't talk to anybody. He didn't even talk to Chilli. He just sat at his desk, fiddling with the paper, never really doing any work. So when they went out on the break, Chilli talked to him. He pulled him to the corner. He said, man, I need to talk to you. Now, Chilli had been up all night. He had decided, I got to lay the law down because I can't let this man push me around. So when he gets him over to himself and he's talking to him, he's telling him what the business is with him. He said, if you want to do it, let's do it. But for some reason, the op is frozen. He really can't, he's hearing what Chilli's saying, but he can't move, he can't act on it. He's just standing there listening to him. So Chilli said, is everything straight? What's wrong with you? And the op he was just staring at him, just with a blanket look on his face. And it spooked Chilli. It spooked him. He had never seen anybody look like that. The man looked like he had seen a ghost. He didn't know what to think. He was terrified. So I went back in after the break and they went back into the classroom, and Chilli, he sat at his desk trying to grade some papers, but he couldn't get the op off his mind. And he's like, what is wrong with him? So when they got back to the unit, he pulled him to the side. He said, man, do you need to talk? Because see, that's who Chilli really was. And he told him, he said, man, I had this dream, man. Now you got to keep this in mind. Let me tell you something. Let me explain something to you. These people are two enemies. Chilli don't see him as an enemy like that, but the op sees Chilli as an enemy. You understand? And he's so afraid that he confides in the one person that he can't stand. But he don't even know why he don't like him. He don't understand why he don't like him. But he know he don't like him. But he's so afraid of what's going on with him because he can't get these thoughts out of his mind. He can't get the image out of his mind about that dream, and he confides in Chilli. Why? Because Chilli's the one that's shown interest in it. Other than Pastor T and Chilli, did nobody show interest in it. His brothers just talked to him. They didn't really listen to him. So now Chilli's wanting to know what's wrong with you. In the face of all that this brother could do to Chilli, he still had enough in him to be concerned about his well-being because he had never seen that look before. This brother looked lost. He looked like he was on the verge of losing it. And Chilli wanted to help him. Yeah, maybe it would have benefited Chilli in some kind of way or not, who knows. But his concern was real. So as he started breaking everything down to Chilli Chilli sat there and he listened to him and he's like, wow. And he told him that he had talked to Pastor T about it, and Chilli told him, he said, Pastor T's the real deal. You need to listen to him. And he asked Chilli, he said, have you ever had the dream? He said, I've had it. He said, I've had the dream. And I'm trying to change my life. He said, it's hard though. It's hard because every time you take a step forward, you take 2 steps back. You're always going to have people pulling at you, tugging at you, not wanting you to do it because they don't want to do it, because they're afraid. He said, but I'm working on it. I'm taking 1 step at a time. So the op, he ends the conversation after about 30, 40 minutes and goes to his cell. And he can't get it off his mind. He can't wait till the next morning. The next morning comes and he goes to see Pastor T, but Pastor T is not there, and he panics. He said, where is he? Why is he not here? I need to talk to him. And the chaplain that was there in his place told him, he said, he'll be back tomorrow. He said, is there anything that I can do for you? He said, no, ain't nothing you can do for me. And when he leaves the chaplain's office, he runs into a captain. And the captain said, are you okay? And he said, no, I need to talk to Pastor T. And he said, hold on, let me call him. So he called Pastor T because the captain saw something. He knew something was off. So he called Pastor T and he told him that the op needed to talk to him. It was serious. And Pastor T told him, he said, I can't make it right now. I'll be there later. Because see, Pastor T had a lot of responsibilities as the pastor at the prison. And see, a family member of an inmate was supposed to have been meeting him at the hospital so that they could visit their loved one that was incarcerated that was about to die. And he wanted to make sure that they were able to get in and talk to him and get out of there without any hassles. So he made sure to stay there to get that done. And then after he got that done, he hurried off to the prison. And when he got to the prison, it was afternoon. They had already finished serving chow, so he had to get the captain to escort the op to the chapel. And when the op got up to the chapel, he's talking to Pastor T. And he's laying out everything that he had been through, everything that he had done. And he told him, he said, help me. He said, help me. And that's when Pastor T told him, he said, you got to confess this. He said, you got to confess. And you got to be real with yourself. So he told him he wanted to do it. So that night at church, it turns out that Chilli ended up coming to church. And a lot of the other guys, they came up to the church. And they're sitting in there, and the op, he stands up. And he said, I got something that I want to say. And Pastor T invites him up to the pulpit. And when he gets up to the pulpit, he stands there and he looks out over the crowd. And Chilli, he's staring at him, not knowing what he's about to say. And he sees this glow about him. He sees this glow about him. But at that same moment, that spirit of fear filled Chilli. And he wanted to get up and run from the church. But he didn't. He sat there. And while he sat there, the op started to detail why he was in prison, the things that he had done. And then he confessed in front of everybody to hurting this man, killing this man. And a lot of people didn't know it at the time, but he had already, with the charge that he was back in on, been held accountable for D-Money's case. Him and his friend had pled to a lower charge, but it wasn't publicized. See, that's how they do sometimes. It'll hit the news and then it's gone. And it had slipped by everybody. And he was talking about it, but he didn't mention D-Money's name. And the whole time he was talking, he was staring at Chilli. And he was saying that his friend walked in as we were stabbing him. And he walked back out. And he said when his friend walked out, I wanted to stop. I wanted to stop. But my friend wouldn't let me. And he said that was the first time that I had gotten a taste of blood. And after that, I couldn't stop. And when they caught us, by then we got 3 bodies. And we paid for that. And my friend is dead and I'm here for the rest of my life because of that. So now, Chilli and some of the other brothers, they sitting there and they're looking around and they're trying to figure out, is he talking about D-Money? Because he didn't call his name. He didn't call his name. So they're looking at Chilli and Chilli's looking at them and he's not saying anything, but that fear that he felt, it was real and it was washing all over him. And if you want to know what happened, you're going to have to tune into the next episode. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.
I'm getting so